Hello, and welcome to the Social Psychic Radio Show featuring Jason Zook. In uncertain times, we must change our focus and priorities. This show will highlight social justice issues with the goal of expanding minds and increasing unity, love, and mutual respect for ourselves and our planet. We support the Black Lives Matter movement. Our show aspires to promote social spirituality, which simply means that by coming together, we can solve any of our problems, including the goal of bringing an end to all forms of hate, discrimination, bias, or oppression. We must protect our environment, reform our criminal justice system, and protect every citizen from police brutality. When we come together, it becomes possible to bridge the gaps that plague our society and divide us from within. We the people means everyone.
Hello and welcome to the Social Psychic Radio Show. This is Jason Zook. It's a great pleasure I have the opportunity of presenting special guest Jennifer Helene to the show today. Jennifer is an international entrepreneur for over 2 decades. Her expertise is in nutrition and behavioral change. She builds teams and creates methodologies that conceive innovation before circumstances demand it. She leads end-to-end marketing programs by developing and evolving a variety of lifestyle brands through strategy and direct content, design across all marketing touchpoints like video, email, social, blog, advertising, community, websites, events, etc. Jennifer leads several online educational programs by developing innovative content strategies for learning management systems. She directs, designs, schedules, budgets, and directs her sales staff to scale systems globally. And she represents a variety of programs as a presenter and evangelist. Jennifer Helene develops training methodologies for a myriad of lifestyle medicine protocols and conducts profitable, immersive coaching, training, marketing, and mentoring programs. It's a great pleasure I have the opportunity of presenting Jennifer Helene to the show.
Thanks so much.
It's a pleasure having you on. It's something that I've been looking forward to for quite some time, and we coordinate our schedule to get this to do. But I want to ask you, in terms of your background, how did you become entrepreneurial? And what was your greatest obstacle to going out on your own?
Well, it's interesting because I started out entrepreneurial. I was literally packing my bags to go to college, and this headhunter, well, not headhunter, but she worked for this modeling agency for plus size modeling. She was the head of the division. I don't know how she found me because I lived in Northern Virginia. She was in New York City, and said, Helene, why don't you come up to New York and give it a try? And I thought, modeling, like that's a joke. That's not a real career. I'm going to go to college. Like that's real, modeling is not real. But she told me, give it 2 weeks and see how you do, see how you like it. And it was exciting and it was confronting and I was successful. And so I just decided, I said, I'll give it a year. And so I deferred my admission for a year, deferred my admission for the second year. And I was traveling all over the world and I was making money and it was just like really exciting. So I feel like I literally graduated from high school and then went to New York City, hit the ground running. But mind you, I was raised by 2 entrepreneurs. So for me, like going into like 9 to 5 really wasn't in my realm of reality because I didn't eat it and breathe it and live it. My uncle was an entrepreneur, like everybody in my surroundings just was in business for themselves. So it was, the idea of getting a job actually and working for somebody else is more like the discomfort for me at this time in my life because I feel so capable and I feel I have what it takes, to do it. And I love working in collaboration with others, but I don't know about that whole 9 to 5 thing.
I think it's exciting when I can have someone, an entrepreneurial spirit, come on the show and discuss it. And from your vantage point, it sounds like it was your paradigm to begin with because of your upbringing. You didn't have the 9 to 5 glasses on. You're like, I don't even know what those are. I'd rather just keep my glasses and do my thing.
Yeah.
That sounds exciting.
It is. But like my sister, who is totally 9 to 5, she's just like, you can never really take a vacation. You never really take off on the weekend. She's like, you really shouldn't be working. It's after 7, and I'm like, well,
I love what I do.
Right.
Let me ask you this. What do you consider in your own background that's motivated you to pursue having a healthy lifestyle and presenting it as part of your brand?
Well, really, Zach, it's all about freedom. And when I say that, it's multifaceted, multidimensional, because freedom in my mind and freedom in my heart, freedom in my soul are definitely, definitely a mindset, but it's also physiologically embedded and imprinted. And I was really sick as a kid. I had this rare bone infection, bone marrow infection. So I was in a wheelchair for a few years. There was just a lot of sickness around me as a kid. And I realized really young that without your health, you really don't have anything. You just can't have fun. You can't be free. You can't enjoy life. You can't get to the bathroom. You can't get to school. You can't play. It's just I really didn't take it for advantage. My mom ended up dying early, and there were all these events in my life where I was shown that health is a priority and that health creates freedom. And there's actually discipline inside of that also equates freedom. The healthier I got, the more free I felt. And also there's this channeled light, because when you're eating a lot of plant-based foods and healthy foods, you're eating light captured in leaves as phytonutrients.
I love that.
And then you open up your body to be able to receive more light and more information and higher states of consciousness. You increase your vibrational frequency. And so health for me is just, it keeps revealing itself to me as how important it is, not only for myself, but everyone I think about, everyone I touch, everyone in my sphere, which is everyone, because we're all one. And so it's not just for me, it's for everything all the time. And so that's driven me to see a lot of suffering, right? The more clarity I get, the more I can see. And then the more I want to help. And I know that it's not only about nutrition, it's not only about health, but I know that that's a really important building block. And oftentimes life will call out to us right there at that pain, cause pain there, cause a breakdown there to bring our attention to like, oh, I have to do something differently. Oh, I have to wake up. And once you wake up, you can never go back to sleep. That's the good news and the bad news.
I'll say this to you. As you're talking right now, your energy exudes clarity. You're in a very clear place right now, and you've gotten to some decisions in your life that your clarity is coming from right now. And I feel like it's going to be very successful for you. So just know that, because as you're talking to me, you're talking about certain spiritual things, and I could feel the energy, and your energy is very clear. It means like you've kind of made a lot of decisive things, and you had to go through things and kind of get through the thick of it in order to get to where you are right now. So you're not going to go through more thorny areas or painful areas. You got a lot of healing you've done, and it shows. And so going forward, you got good stuff ahead, I feel, just to let you know.
Thank you.
I know you're open to it, so that's why I'm sharing that with you.
Oh, I so appreciate it. So it's such confirmation because, like as you get older and things don't work out, you get jaded, and I'm like, I don't want to be that hopeless, jaded woman who's over 40, because there's so many of us out here. And I'm like, I don't want to be
45. I'm okay with it. Right? Being 40 is like,
it's great. No, it's great. But I just don't want to be hopeless and jaded at 40. Like I want to be hopeful. And it's like, I want like the frontier of my life and my greatness to be like on the threshold of that, instead of like that hopeless dark pit of like sorrow and despair.
Well, I can see you with a spiritual person too, someone who's very spiritually connected. So you're not going to have some disconnects. Like I know it's like when you're trying to be in a relationship with someone and you're very spiritually focused and they may not be as much. And there's like a tension that's under the surface because you want to be yourself, but you don't want to dim your light for the other person who's not as in tuned. Right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's challenging. And that's exhausting too. Cause you gotta like dim your light for someone else. And you know what? You're spiritual. I can see it in your energy. You're meant to do spiritual things. So the person you wind up with needs to understand that and respect it and see it from the same point of view.
Oh, thank you for that. Gosh, I have not chosen that in the past. And I do see that is on the horizon.
It just creates a tension.
Well, and I think a lot of relationships, romantic or otherwise, are about being understood. And there's a lot at play when you are an embodied spiritual being and you can't avoid it, right? It's like, it's just who you are. That synchronicity is just like pure magic. And I need that in my life for inspiration and validation and just existence.
Put it this way, if you get opportunities about going to different like retreats that have to do with spiritual things, I'd say go on a few retreats. You might enjoy them.
Nice. There's one next weekend I really want to go on.
Yeah, it might be that it might be that coming up that soon or some other time shortly thereafter. But I feel like you'll have an opportunity with that. So
thank you.
I'm gonna ask you this. What has been your greatest obstacle in the last 5 years?
Oh,
And
so
why?
many. My greatest obstacles in the last 5 years, there have been a lot. Let me see what comes up. So my daughter's is a teenager, and she's gone through some really tough times. That's been one of my biggest obstacles, and the solution to that was shocking. Couldn't believe it, but and I'll tell you about it. But that's one really really big obstacle. Another obstacle has been just ending my last relationship. It seems like whenever I end a relationship, it's like volatile and dangerous and it's just scary. That's happened in the last 5 years, which was great, but also like challenging. And I would say like my professional growth, I feel has been, kind of stunted. Those are three things in the last 5 years that have been really, really challenging.
What have you found for yourself that you are able to channel within yourself to get past these obstacles? And if you could share that with our audience, like I'll give you an example. When I had my little fire thing the other day, I had to get outside after it ended. I got in the car. I went along the water. I saw a rainbow. I got my grandfather's spirit came to me and reinforced that I'm on the right path in life. It's his anniversary of his death that day. It's my nephew's birthday that day.
Wow.
My address is 812. A lot of crazy things all happen with synchronicity that day. So this fire happens, as we were talking about before we started doing this, like being in Florida without air conditioning in August during like a tropical storm coming is like, most people would be like, are you crazy? Or like, but I'm like, you know what? I'm embracing life because I have a temporary AC unit and it works perfectly. And I'm the mindset. It's all about mindset, how you approach it. And I know my mindset is going to be awesome going forward. So I'm probably get a new AC and, life will be good. And, and sharing all that with you, I want to ask you, how do you do your own mindset? How do you deal with difficulties in your mind? Like what type of steps do you take when you're dealing with either your daughter, when a thought pops in your head about your daughter or something difficult from the past, or a thought will pop in about your ex and you think of that moment? What do you do to get outside of that?
Oh, Jason, so many things. So I'm kind of obsessed about this topic because this is also the key to freedom, is being able to have skills in your toolbox. And I actually created a whole framework around it. I call it emotional stamina. And I'll share it with you, but I also want to share there's an adjunct to it that I practice now, which is a little bit edgy. And I haven't launched this into the world yet. But so emotional stamina is really simple. It's acknowledge, accept, and let go. Right. So it sounds simple, but the first thing is oftentimes when I'm when I'm really upset, I can be, or any of us will get overwhelmed. It's like anger, frustration, hope, not hopelessness, but no control, I don't want this to happen, but I can't stop it from happening. And you can see it. And it's but if you can acknowledge it, it helps you get out of the overwhelm, right? It helps you become the seer of the scene. It helps you to step out of, this identifying with your thoughts as you, because you are not your thoughts, right? So take some distance to be able to acknowledge it. That's step one. That's definitely something I practice. And that's almost the easiest thing for me now. It didn't used to be because I was so caught up in it. And then you have to be careful. I have to be careful because I don't want to get hooked in a story of a blame game or a victim, so they got to acknowledge it and just be like, okay, this is what is. And oftentimes there's a lot of shame wrapped up in that for me, because it's I shouldn't be feeling that way. I should be happy. I should be grateful. I should be. And the second step would be to accept it. And so that in itself has been something I've had to really practice, because I always say your daily practice is your strongest medicine. And I'm not at 100% batting average on that acceptance piece, but I try progressively, as I work through some of those three big things that I identified, it's gotten easier for me to accept it. Okay, this is what is, because there's usually a lot of resistance. That's why I'm upset about it, right? So if I can remove the resistance and I can accept more, if I can forgive myself, if I can forgive them, or whatever needs to happen.
So hard sometimes, isn't it? It's just so hard to forgive, especially when you don't understand the reason something happens. Like if someone ghosts you, for example, or you're trying to date them, or I've had friends that happened to. It happened to me actually too.
It's happened to me too. Yeah.
It's you question how does that work? Because my mind doesn't work that way. I'm very expressive, and I'll share everything about when I'm trying to connect with somebody. If it's not going to work, I'll tell them in a respectful way, hey, it's not working out.
But people get paralyzed, and then when you are able to accept, to the extent to which you're able to accept, then that's directly correlated to how I'm able to let go. So like if I can accept like 60, 70%, which is kind of easy for me, but that's 70 to 90. Sometimes that's a little bit deeper. And then the letting go process as well. Like how much there's like a gripping, and then there's like a letting go, and then there's a completion in that. So that's the process. But I find that actually this movement practice that I have is really powerful too, because oftentimes the upset or the challenge will live in my body somewhere, and it may be attached to something that maybe isn't even mine. It's an imprint from my childhood, from my ancestors, from another entity. I don't know. So it's in my field, it's in my body. And then I find that if I'm able to move in my embodiment practice of like dance or yoga or swimming or
something active.
Yeah. Like I can identify, but it's got to be emotionally engaged.
Okay.
And that's like music, like loud music. How
about if you go, what if you go walking and you listen to music and you're enjoying your music while you're walking on the water? And
exactly.
Something like that.
Yes. And like really like fully immersed, like tethered to the vibration of the sound.
I love that because healing is sound. Sound is healing. Music's healing modality coupled with movement. I get it. And then you could use the imagery in your mind and you can work towards.
It's powerful. But you know what? At the end of the day, I'm like basically just, this is the simplest thing and it's the easiest thing. And after all that stuff I just described, this is like what ends up happening. I'm worried about something. And then I just have to like envision it. And I say, okay, God, take it, do your magic. Okay, God, take it, do your magic. Because I don't know, my tiny little brain, I can't. It's not.
I can compartmentalize negative thoughts or negative things, or you can't do this, or you're not going to, I do, I put them in a box in my mind, and then I put it on a shelf in my mind, and I say, it stays there, let it stay there. I'm doing my thing. I had to do that when I had my cancer diagnosis a couple of years ago for a few months. I had to work through that. Best way I worked through it is it went in a box. And so during the day, I'd be my normal life. And I think sometimes when you can compartmentalize something, an unpleasant thought or a negative thought or something that might bother you, I'm not saying hide it away. I'm saying, but you put it in an area where you can revisit if you need to at the right time.
Yeah, I definitely do that. And I've done it. I used to do it, not take the box off the shelf. And then I had some issues going on because I couldn't see stuff that was happening. It was actually impairing my vision. I don't mean like my actual vision, like my ability to see clearly. But honestly, most of my life I've bypassed. I'm a world-class bypasser, right? I've really gotten to the bottom of this the last 3 years, but like I would go over it. I would go under it. I'd go around it. Like, oh yeah. I mean, like, but now I know the power is going through it. And that's where this emotional stamina framework came from, because like I was leaving my body, like I was doing everything imaginable to like not go through it, but that's not okay. And then the compartmentalization was a commitment I made 2 years ago. Like I'm no longer going to compartmentalize. I want to be integrated. But man, that was a Pandora's box. I opened it up and it was like, oh, what did I do? It was so much stuff.
So many people talk about this, and I want to see what your viewpoint is. Yeah. Everybody I've been talking to is spiritual, has their own coaching business, or they're a psychic, or they're intuitive healer. A lot of people have said that in the last 2 years, the true rawness of everything around them with relationships, everything is just coming to the surface, forcing people to have to really like confront whatever it is in their relationships with others or within themselves or any obstacles. I wanted to see if you've experienced that as well, that you feel like because of the pandemic and having to spend a lot of time on our own by ourselves or working through stuff from the past.
Pandemic or no pandemic. I mean, something was going to happen to create that phenomena of like, it's got to burn down, it's like whatever is not serving your highest good is going to burn down.
I'm going to think of you next time I have something that's in my head that I'm like, it's not serving the higher good. It's got to burn down.
Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, that's like what I see in my mind's eye. It's like the Phoenix rising, you know what I mean? And she or here, it's rising and, it's burning, right? Even Icarus, right? Same kind of thing in the Greek mythology. It's how it's happening. Everything like education, government, health, relationships, parenting, like, everything is like becoming, really real. And it would have been something if it wasn't the pandemic, but it's time on this planet now for this.
I feel like it's like shedding the skin. It's not going to feel comfortable sometimes.
No.
But we're able to do it. And when we get to the other side of it, we'll appreciate it.
And that's why we have to trust. And that's why that handing over thing, I don't know how people do it without a higher power. I really don't. Because at the end of the day, I'm not in control. I don't really know. I think I know, but I don't
pray
know.
a lot. I pray a lot to the higher power that exists out there. I'm like, thank you, God.
Me
A lot.
too.
Let me ask you this. And I know we've talked about fitness earlier, but I've known from my vantage point, I've struggled in the past. I finally have gotten my fitness in better control because of, going walking regularly, eating healthier, intermittent fasting, my own little strategies I do.
Cool.
How would you recommend to our audience if they're struggling with their own fitness routine, exercise idea, as you want to call it? Some people don't want to use the term exercise too broadly.
Right.
And like, how do you get someone who's not as motivated to connect themselves to a healthier physical lifestyle to adopting one and actually looking forward to doing it?
Yeah, great question. Because if you're not active, it's confronting, it's uncomfortable, and it's like, how do I get from here to there? So first of all, it has to be fun. We kind of forget to play as adults. Like just really, what we used to do as kids. You watch kids play, they're having so much fun. They're dancing, they're
a backyard with a couple of trees is like Disney World when you're a little kid, right?
So like we think of play now as adults as like drinking alcohol and I don't know, having sex. But those may be fun for people, but like what is fun? That's maybe not that, eating. There's like, they're pleasures. Great. I get that. They're all fun, but like, what else can you do that's fun and playful? Like maybe it means partnership. Like a lot of women love to walk together. So instead of having tea with somebody, go for a slow, flat walk, start somewhere. So I really want to say start somewhere. And that can mean like parking a little further away from the grocery store entrance.
Yes.
When you go to get groceries, like it can mean, well, every time you go up the stairs, you go back down and then back up. It can mean like you sit down on the couch and you actually commit to getting up and down 10 times before you actually sit down. So it can be like small things that you do incrementally and that you're not hard on yourself. Because essentially exercise is the ultimate resilience training. You get to feel in the physical realm what it's like to build and change. And it's uncomfortable. When you feel the muscle burn, it's actually uncomfortable, but that is the literal translation of what's happening. You're changing your muscle, like your shoulder or your quadriceps or whatever it is. So it's really important to get comfortable getting uncomfortable. Like when your breath gets short, when you're running or walking, you that's uncomfortable, but you're actually expanding. You're finding your edge when you feel a little discomfort and you're expanding it. So I'm not suggesting you hurt yourself or you go into aggression, right? But like find out where your edge is and come up against it every day a little bit, because it's going to train you to become wildly resilient. And if you're not exercising, you're dying a slow death. It's proven by research. You've got depression, you've got ADHD, you've got Alzheimer's disease, you've got cancer, like all these things, even COVID. There's a research study that came out from Kaiser Permanente. 50,000 people were in the study. Your ability to resist COVID-19 is like substantially reduced, like over 40% reduced if you're exercising. So for your immune system, for your vitality, for your longevity, for everything, like we have to move, but it doesn't have to be, extreme. You could go out in the garden, do some weed pulling.
Yeah. It's hard with this COVID stuff, because it's still at such a nascent stage, right? That we know where the research is and one thing comes out. And I think logically, if you're healthier, you're going to have a better immunity to something, even if it's not in your system normally, right?
Totally.
I want to ask you this. Looking at your own background and everything that you've done to date, what's been your favorite thing that you've done so far for yourself that you don't usually talk about during an interview, but that it's something that you really can attribute as something that you are committed to improving self-love in your life and improving your relationships with others? Like, has there been anything that you've done in the last 5 years or that's guided you to see that this is a pivotal moment in your life, that you're committed to self-love, improving self-love in your life and improving your connections with others in your life?
Well, it's funny. The first part of your question had me think of like epic things that have happened throughout my life. And then the second part, it led me to a more specific example. And it's really been my daughter. I am clear now after 16 years that our children and their problems are the ultimate expression of our unexpressed subconscious patterns that need to be cleared and healed.
Wow.
That's big. I had no idea being a parent would be this much responsibility. It's enormous. And it's so revealing to see when something's out of order. And a lot of parents would disagree with me, maybe because they don't want to take it on, or they're unwilling to see, or they disagree, which is fine. But I notice that when I do my healing, that it's healing not just me, but it's healing like the lineage.
It's because you're connected. Love's connecting you as an umbilical cord, right? So if you increase your own self-love or your own realizations and acknowledge things, and then it can help repair a relationship with a daughter or a mother or a parent or someone else, best friend.
Yeah. And so like she was having some stuff going on with her eating, and I had to really take a close look. And it's challenging because you can't see what you can't see, but the child happens to be there to show you. And it's not pretty, it's not pleasant. You know, when it is, but when it's not, it's not. And I had to really, really take a look, like what is going on. And there was like all this deep shame that I had to heal. And as I did my healing, you know, she lost like 100 pounds over COVID. It's big. And so that helped to deepen my self-love. And I didn't even know that I had that shame going on. And it was like I was rejecting her, but I was actually just rejecting me.
How does it feel when you have that realization and then you start acting differently because of it? You start appreciating the situation.
Well, I just felt so grateful. And I felt so humble. I felt so powerful too. I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, this life is so connected to me. So I was like, wow, this is really big.
I was going to ask you, how's your relationship ever since that realization and moving forward?
It's so much better. It's so much better. I mean, she's kind of crossing some boundaries as of yesterday. So we're in a little tangle right now, but up until yesterday, everything was amazing. We had this open communication and this heart connection, and it was like really beautiful, but I'm still her mom and she's still a teenager. And she's like, oh, well, I think I want to do this. And I think I want to do that. And, you know, you have no say. And I'm like, well, actually I do. So
how old is she?
She's 16.
Oh yeah. Classic middle of that stage age.
I know she's perfect. It's just, I'm just, you know, still a mom.
Understand. From your perspective, what do you think is one of the most impactful things you do on your daily routine that helps you with keeping your habits in check, wherever you want your habits to go?
The most impactful thing, I know this is going to sound really funny, but it's like, honestly, making sure you've got the right fuel. Planning and preparation is key. So if you don't have the right fuel, you're screwing yourself. Excuse my frankness, but that's really, really big. Kind of preparing. So like before this interview, like I made sure I had my green juice because I hadn't had it today. And I'm like, I'm going to be like, not feeling good, you know, and making sure you have your fuel because you're going to get hungry, just like the clouds come in the sky and the sun rises and sets, hunger's going to come. So you got to be prepared. And I think also carving out time, just like I do, you know, with any appointment, like this appointment today or any appointment, like carve out the time for your exercise and your meditation or whatever it is that's going to, you know, help you. To me, those two things are really key. So I think creating the time in your day is going to determine the quality of your being and the quality of your energy. So that's some of those things I do. And I'll wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. if I need to, but it's got to happen. And if it doesn't, you know, you and everyone else, your business, your kids, your life, your profession, everything is going to pay the price because you're not going to be at the top of your game. Now, of course you need sleep, right? So sleep is important. But you just got to be really honest. And I think if I could summarize it into one thing, it's about just being honest with your values, your priorities, honest with what you're committed to in life, and then aligning your actions with your word, you know, and your thought. And that is integrity, right? Gandhi said that's how he defined integrity: thought, word, and action in alignment. If one of those things is out of alignment, like just not going to have that. Like you talked about that incredible synchronicity, the rainbow, the confirmations. I mean, I live for that stuff, you know, and that stuff just happens all the time when you're in alignment.
I was just giving a reading right before our interview. And during my reading, my client was struggling she's grieving something, loss of pet, loss of relatives at the same time with this last year. And I just was explaining synchronicity as a means that loved ones communicate with us. the spiritual realm can communicate with us through synchronicity. And I was explaining it to her. And the rainbow example for me was the most recent, but other ways it happens is as easy as the time of day. If you're thinking about somebody who's deceased or even someone you're connected to on earth, you might have a soul connect somebody. You look at the clock and it's 3:33. Guess what? That's synchronicity. It doesn't take an act of God to create that synchronicity. It's an act of spirit. And it could be something like the time of day or a song popping in your head or a song on the radio or a bird being sent to you or a feather on the ground, a penny on the ground. It takes all shapes.
It does. And we have to slow down enough to pay attention to it.
You're right about that. And that's what takes a lot for somebody sometimes is to be able to see or appreciate is that you can communicate with the other side, but it requires just being able to just quiet the mind and free yourself from your ego.
Yeah.
And not disbelieve whatever it is you get.
Yeah. And sometimes I have to ask for a sign. And then so I'm like somehow my awareness is more heightened because I've asked for it. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Well, a good example. If I was to say you're breathing right now, you wouldn't be paying attention to the breathing and anyone in our audience wouldn't be paying attention to unless I said, you're breathing right now. Now you know you're breathing. You can feel your breath, right?
Yeah.
Spirituality is the same way. You don't always pay attention to the spiritual aspects of your existence until someone brings it to your attention.
Yeah, I can't avoid it. But you're right. That's normally the way it is.
What do you find is most enjoyable about coaching others?
Aha moments. When I can ask a question and they have a realization, I call that an aha moment, when they're able to see themselves more clearly, more truthfully, but from a place of love and tenderness, not from a place of you're wrong and I'm right, which would be a power struggle. So that's really, there's not much more that delights me than that moment, that aha moment. And I just love it. And I'm really good at it. And I can't really get enough of it. It makes me so.
Do you feel like when you work with somebody, something flips a switch and they change over time, that you can see that improved momentum from the efforts of your coaching?
Absolutely.
And that's very gratifying when you can help someone and show them a certain skill set or a concept or a perspective, and that can get that person through that part of their struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most people come in and they're like, well, there's no time or there's no money or there's, they have like the very specific context that they're convinced, are the reason why they're limited. And it's so much fun to turn that around and then create this fundamental shift internally to, empower them. It's really beautiful work. I love it. It can be frustrating sometimes, when they're not willing or ready, right? But they're not they don't come to me until they are. That's usually what I find. They used to come to me before they were ready, but that's changed. I've changed, I guess.
What was the most challenging thing for you to get your name out there as a coach?
Maybe it's still challenging, because there's a lot of people in the space. It's still challenging. I mean, I never feel like I'm really doing enough.
You know what I find challenging? I'll tell you this. Maybe you can agree with it. I don't know. Just me. I go on social media and I have my social media accounts for my show and for my psychic stuff. And I find it challenging to understand algorithms, to understand interactive things with SEO. That's all over my head. Like if I had hair, it would hit my hair when I did this, but it's way over my head. So I defer to others to do that for me when I can. But I want to ask you, like, how do you find with the new digital age we live in when you're an entrepreneur, right? And you love what you do, but you love doing what you do. You don't love doing what you don't know, right? Like trying to market yourself or have to use SEO terms or algorithm postings, or, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're more tuned to that than I am, but I was asking, like, how do you navigate all those areas? Is that something that you'll refer it out to somebody else or you'll consult with somebody? That's what I usually do to make it.
The game is changing. I mean, and sometimes I try not to get too stuck in my intellectual constructs around this because I have a really strong mind. And I know that belief is a huge influencer on, what reality ends up showing me. So I know that there's also the possibility of miracles, right? Of happening. Like, you don't necessarily need the algorithms and all that stuff. Like you just need the right strategic collaborations, the right person to endorse you, the right partnerships, right? I know that that's actually the magic, to be seen and known at a time that was, previously unknown. Like, for example, like you walk into a restaurant and then you meet somebody, you get into an elevator refrigerator at the same time as somebody else. Like all that stuff's been happening to me my whole life. And so I still know that that is possible, even in this internet world. But like to think about scaling and to think about impact and to think about this. But yeah, so now it's like play to pay in one kind of intellectual construct inside of one story, right? It's pay to play. And when I say that, I mean, to me, doing it right looks like copywriter, graphic designer, web developer, and then of course your data analytics. And then of course, then you need a branding strategist to like tie all that together. So that's a proper team. And that comes at a price point. And then above that, you've got your advertising spend, right? So I mean, to me, to do it right, that's how it looks. And it's, $8,000 or more. And then you need the PR person, right? And then you need, it's like, so I mean, like,
it's a ladder of cost.
Yeah, but I mean,
the higher you go,
but if you're bringing in 200,
you got to invest in yourself. There's
$100K a month. Yeah. I mean, if you're bringing in enough, then that would make a lot of sense. Sure. To be generating content and then to be, and then, it's his own animal. When you're just starting out, it's like, how do you get, there? And I think that deciding what your superpower is, because maybe you've got a lot of them, but really understanding who you are and like where your genius is, how you help people uniquely, like what is your imprint in your voice and your energy in everything that you do, what you create. I think that's really important. So I create transformation isn't specific enough. Like I think as coaches, we have to be really specific. Like where is and it's unique. Only you have it. That's for sure. And you do it better than anyone else. And then you have to be courageous enough to like speak about that, not about what society wants you to be. Like maybe you want to be a sex coach. You're like, oh, I don't know if my dad will approve, but whatever, like maybe that's what you're really good at, helping people with breakthroughs in their sexual energy or whatever it is. You got to find it. And then you've got to be courageous enough to like speak out about it as much and with as many people as you can. And it's not like you go to networking events anymore. Go ahead.
That's a great point you raised, because even when I did the psychic thing going out to do that, to be a psychic, I didn't know how to market myself as a psychic. I just I was lucky. I had some people that marketed for me. Basically, they gave me clients and they said, show up in my shop and I'll give you people you can read. And that's how it started for me. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been able to do that or have the right person say the right things to you. Like, you could do this, you could do this. Yeah. And it's just like having that. And that's what coaching is, right? I mean, coaching is somebody saying to you, you could do this, you could do this. And that's why when you look at professional athletes, they have an amazing team of coaches, and usually the ones, or they are the gymnasts, or, that's why I think life coaching could be helping people optimally doing what they should do in their own lives and their own goals and overcoming the barriers.
Yeah. And it's like, you can do this, and I'm not going to believe your limiting story, and I'm not going to believe your excuses. So it's like one of my nicknames is Gutless Guru, because, I'm like really direct, audaciously direct and to the point, and it's like, but it's out of love, it's not like I'm trying to be mean. It's just like, okay, you don't have time to exercise. Sorry, I don't believe you. You got to make time.
How about you take yourself off the couch for about a half hour and turn off the remote and get on the floor and do some push-ups and sit-ups or stretch or go walk.
Yeah, but it's got to be fun. So whatever that means,
Let me ask you this. If somebody in the audience wanted to become a life coach, how would you recommend they go about doing that?
Well, it's really important to get trained. I thought that everybody could be a coach just without any training. And I actually disagree with that now. I think you really need proper training. You need to understand how to co-create. And at some point, the magic in coaching is not knowing, is that curiosity. But you've got to be able to get your own stuff out of the way. And that's why a good training course is going to help you get your own stuff out of the way, teach you how to be curious about the other person without advising, counseling, teaching. Like to be a good coach, it's really just creating a clear space. And then knowing and practicing the art of questioning, powerful, open-ended questions. And so it is a process, and you feel really lost inside of it. And that's actually when you're in a great spot, but it's scary because it's the unknown. So navigating the unknown is part of coaching. And so you should go to I believe ontological coaching is the best kind. And
ontological, can you explain that further for the audience? In case
I know it's like a confusing term. I believe ontological is, the study of the way of being.
Okay.
So how your being is coming from your intentions, from your emotions, and from, of course, your contextual imprints of, how you see the world. And that's my definition, but it's also a spiritual thing. Ontological is also a spiritual thing. How would you define ontological?
I haven't really thought of that term before. For me, spirituality is rooted within oneself, but it's also based on your connection to your higher power, but your understanding of things. So that's how I look at it. So for coaching purposes, I think what a coach does is help someone reach their potential by getting the obstacles cleared out of the way to help the person see the big picture, right? And I think you help bring that into focus. And that's why, from my vantage point, one of the things I started doing with my show is raising mental health awareness, right?
Nice.
I think mental health awareness is pivotal. And I think coaching is an element of mental health awareness. Because if you're in my audience right now and you're lost about something, I'm going to say, why stay lost? If you could talk to someone that can help you find whatever it is you're looking for within yourself, it's worth the investment if you could do so.
Yeah. And there's a delineation, between therapy and coaching. Like if you're clinically depressed, you definitely need a psychologist or psychiatrist.
100%.
If you have some massive trauma, sexual molestation, or been a vet, if you've got legitimate trauma, which I didn't even realize, even just being cheated on is trauma. I was like, oh no, that's nothing. I mean, compared to blah, blah, blah. No, we all have trauma, and it's all in a different gradient, right? On a scale of 1 to 100. So there are times when we really need the help, but psychologists and psychiatrists are oftentimes looking at the present moment and then working on the past to heal the past. Whereas a coach is really looking at the present moment and helping into the future. We're not going to be equipped to really help you resolve past traumas. Most coach training programs won't equip you with that. So there's some confusion around that. But I just want to say, sometimes I have a client and I will only work with them if they're also working with a psychiatrist or a psychologist, because I know that my skill set is going to fall short in areas and they're not going to move forward.
I love that you it's just incredibly important that you raise that point. I will say this, even for people who come to me for readings, if I find that they're really in deep grief, I'll be like, hey, look, before we do our reading, even though it's for entertainment purposes only, you need to see a counselor or get yourself feel better there before you come to me, because it's not going to be any value at all.
Yeah. If I find the client isn't moving forward, I'll end the relationship temporarily, and I refer them to somebody, because I know
it's ethically the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do ethically. I think you have a point to do that at that stage.
And we need each other, either you hire a coach or you find a friend who can reflect back to you from a place of love, but we all need each other. You look at the most famous behavioral change methodologies, it's AA and Weight Watchers. Yeah. And it's because you have a sponsor, because you have a leader, you have to go to the meetings, you got to show up, and you have a community. That's what we're meant to do. And especially around grief. In our culture, grief is it's so lonely, and it's supposed to be behind closed doors. That's not the way most cultures grieve. They hold each other and they wail and cry and they dance and they grieve fully.
It's important.
I think so. And there's so much opportunity in this country to embrace grief in a different way. I mean, yeah, okay, maybe it's not pretty or it's not pleasant, but I mean, you can't pretend it doesn't exist, and you can't skip steps, and it takes its own time. It just does. So grief is a really interesting topic, especially during COVID-19, because a lot of us have lost, little and big things, jobs and homes and lives and marriages and loved ones. It just goes on and on. There's so much grief right now on the planet. It's really big.
How do you think, as a planet, this might be a macro question, how do you think as a planet we could address these issues better, the grief and the transitions that are occurring right now in so many aspects of our lives that we don't have control over, but we know we can at least try to make sense of things in our minds first off?
Yeah, I think really acknowledging what's up, what's in the space. I think we get so busy and distracted with the news and Netflix and our phones. I think it's really important that we tune in. I work a lot with women, and I ask them how they're doing. They have no idea. They don't know what's in their field. They don't know what's in their minds. They don't know what's in their body. They just keep looking outside. So I think the first step for all of us is just to take 3 breaths and look inside. How are you? What's in this space? And that's that first step of emotional stamina. It's like acknowledge, like, oh, I feel a little, because if we're not going to acknowledge it, it's actually going to take up so much space. You don't even realize it. Right. And then it'll come out kind of sideways and passive aggressiveness towards your neighbor, or your partner, your mom, your, whomever, like we got to tune in and be like, okay.
I'll tell you something. About a year ago when the pandemic was heating up, I remember there was a moment like 3 months into it, we were like really in lockdown, even though Florida didn't have a strict lockdown, I still stayed home a lot. And I remember I was like looking around my place and I had a plan to go to the store and whatever. And I remember I had 4 rolls of toilet paper left and I acted like I had no toilet paper. I started yelling and screaming and running around my place, like venting in just weird ways, right? Luckily I live alone. So until I acknowledge it now, I sound like I was a banshee, but you have one of those moments where you just go beside yourself and you kind of let it out. And then it was my bird that looked at me a certain way that made me realize, okay, you're not acting logical right now. You have 4 rolls of toilet paper in the house still. You didn't run out, but my mind already projected distress to the future moment of me not having any toilet paper. And there's none to exist. You know how many people in our country went and stocked up on their toilet paper probably till their kids who are 5 years old graduate high school.
Yeah,
like,
I know, that's so silly.
It's insane, right?
It's the funniest thing. But you just bring up a really important point. Because we manifest what's in our we're manifesting. We are the ultimate creators of our reality.
Exactly.
And so like today I found myself, it actually brought me to tears. I just finished my swim and boy, oh boy, did I need that swim. I mean, I had all these worries and concerns and things. And I was like, okay. And I kept handing it up to God, right? Until they started to subside. And towards the end of the swim, I felt this deep sense of peace. And on my drive home, I was listening to music, and then I had this like vision of what it would look like for me to have my work make the impact that it was meant to make, and see create space. I actually felt myself creating space in my field to receive these people. And then I envisioned also seeing my bank account as a reflection of that. And like, I literally started to cry. It was so moving and inspiring, but I had to get that worry and that frustration and that upset out of the way before I could even like be in a position to do that. And then later on, I reflected back. I'm like, oh, I was like, we are strengthening what we're practicing. And that includes the like banshee, like,
it only happened once.
No, but we're all doing it all day long. Do you realize? I mean, you do realize, and that we're repeating these thoughts.
We're letting it out helps.
Yeah, that's
I let it out. And that was the part that I guess I realized is that I let it out at that moment and it was no longer inside me. And it was like, hey, I did it in a way where my neighbors might think I'm a little, either they think something crazy is going on. It was the middle of the day, by the way. It wasn't like 3 a.m. that this happened. But ever since then, I don't let things really hit me the same way. Like I think my patience has increased and my ability to forgive the past.
Yeah.
That's where I find things have changed.
You can write, you can swim, you can run, you can talk to a friend, you can talk to your dog, you can talk to the wall, you can do whatever you need to do. I believe that it's like energy in motion, right? Emotions are just energy in motion. And if we don't move it, it's going to stagnate. We've got to be able to move it, however that looks, with your breath work. Everyone's got a different modality that could work for them. Could even be like a bath, right? Just getting into like water helps to actually like, diffuse certain energies.
I love that. I want to ask you this. How does our audience find you? If they want to get in touch with you, where would they find you?
Sweet. Yeah, no, Jennifer-Helene.com. There's a 7-day lifestyle plan you can download. There's some really tasty recipes. I'm really into food. I'm such a foodie, not willing to sacrifice flavor for health. So I have so much fun with food. So there's some great recipes in that, some suggestions on like morning and evening practices, all about resetting your body and mind and spirit, because it's really about the integration. So yeah, Jennifer-Helene.com. And then you can contact me directly as well. There's a contact page there.
Jennifer, I thank you for coming on, and I appreciate the fact that you could share such a positive message with us during these uncertain times. And, part of what I love to do for the show is offer various points of view. And you're notable to me because you're exploring your coaching practice while also helping so many people that need it right now. And I appreciate that. And I love your insight, like sharing stuff about your personal stuff in the last 5 years. I think it gives a point of reflection for our audience. They can look at you, look at me, and they can hear us saying, yeah, you know what? We have those moments. Just like you have that moment, I have that moment, and I'm not ashamed to talk about it. And you could judge me for it if you want, but trust me, if you try it, let it out. You'll feel better. Just don't do it in the middle of traffic or in the middle of the mall. Pick the right place for it, right? If you have to let it out emotionally. But I want to thank you for being able to share, and that takes courage and a certain special person to explore their passions.
Oh, thank you. It's really in service, because that's why we're here. And I do want to just mention, I'm guided to just mention that expressing it doesn't mean smearing it all over people. It means taking responsibility for it in your own space and time so that you can actually show up for other people in a way that's clear. It's like clearing your own space. And that's what coaches have to do, right? We have to, if we're going to hold space for other people, we've got to clear. But even if you're not a coach, it's really important to do. Thank you.
Palo Santo spray to clear in the middle of, energy. In the middle of the day, I'll spray that over my head sometimes.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I hope that the listeners have gotten some value.
I just want to thank Jennifer Helene for coming on the show today and for sharing her insight. Being able to have such an amazing conversation, I think it's so important to have these kind of talks, because anyone in the audience that's dealing with any kind of setbacks or obstacles or difficulties, it's important to look at it from the context of where you're at and where you're headed, not from where you're coming from. If you look at it in the rearview mirror and you look behind yourself, yeah, you'll get overwhelmed, especially recently. A lot of us would. But if you look forward, it can help. And somebody like a coach like Jennifer can really make a difference working with you going in the present moment going forward. Obviously, you should pursue getting help from the appropriate licensed mental health professional if you feel like you're dealing with any anxiety, depression, or anything like that. But I want to bring this up today because of the point of reference of where we are right now. And going forward, I think you're going to see that with health and nutrition and putting your goals as priorities, you're going to have knowledge to know that the things that you once put off for so long because you didn't think they were important enough, or you just didn't feel like they were something you needed to do, now's the time to do it. If anything, that our life has shown us that time is fleeting in our world, and we need to take advantage of every moment we have. So if there's a goal that you have, or you want to create a new habit, or you want to improve your lifestyle, pay attention to this episode today, because I think the coaching and the mentoring stuff we discussed is valuable, and it's something that you could really use for your own benefit. Check out Jennifer's website and stay positive, because when you're positive, anything's possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Social Psychic Radio Show. Don't forget to join us for another episode next time. If you enjoyed the show, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes. You can also check us out on Facebook, and don't forget to visit the Social Psychic YouTube channel. Until next time, it's a big world out there. Keep an open mind, embrace your paradigms, and know that the universe is always yours to explore.